right now. So this is the great fear that I have is that Donald Trump is the reason for everybody to say, "Oh, we won." We haven't won anything.
The old guard does not want new people involved. That's a major problem because the only way that Republicans are going to win is by having more people involved.
Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. David Penn here, and glad to be with you for this episode number 192. Action for Liberty, coming to you from Minneapolis, Minnesota, the belly of the beast, where we have communism in the upper Midwest. This is Thursday night, the 27th of March. I am so pleased to have an in-studio guest today. Uh, we're probably premature to call us friends, although we're well
We're
associated.
friends.
Are we friends?
We're friends.
Well, let me introduce you to Jesse Smith, also known as AKA MAGA Jesse. Uh, Jesse, I'm going to let Jesse tell me a lot that I don't know. The reason that I've asked Jesse to come on for my national audience is that here in Minnesota, there is the same ideological struggle that is going on in your state. I sometimes fall into, war metaphors because it feels like I am personally besieged from time to time, and I'm certainly wronged from time to time all the time. But there is this ideological struggle in the Republican Party between, these are all labels, and labeling is a cognitive distortion because you can't cover the depth and breadth. These are American citizens, they're human beings. And I don't really have a bone to pick with any of them personally. This is about a contest of ideas. And the ideological contention is over what is it to be a Republican? That's what we're struggling with on a nationwide basis. And what I find so interesting and disturbing about the struggle is President Trump settled the issue.
Mhm.
We actually have leadership, and what we actually could be doing is unifying behind that leadership. But in fact, what we're doing is fracturing because you call it the old guard, they call it the rhinos, you could call it the neocons. I don't know what to call fellow self-identified Republicans, and I don't mean to be disparaging, and it's not personal. It's ideological. Contentious this argument about the future of the party is in every state, it's in every congressional district, it's in every precinct in the entire country. And I asked Jesse to come on, which to some people in the Minnesota Republican Party will seem controversial. I'm going to say that's not very clear thinking
Mhm.
because there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions of people that would align themselves with the principles that Action for Liberty is promoting here in Minnesota, and I think throughout the country. But note to Alex Plekish and y'all who are watching this, I'm not having Jesse on to pick a side. I'm having Jesse on because I really don't understand why MN GOP Executive Committee condemned Action for Liberty. I'm relatively new to this. I don't understand the history. I don't understand the antagonism. I don't understand the benefit to the party to create a wedge. Full disclosure to you, Jesse, I had Walter Hudson in this room within the last 2 or 3 months. I
Mhm.
got along great with Walter, and then I started watching Walter right after he was on here, he went on a campaign of, I it was a
A
vitriolic
purge.
it was a vitriolic campaign against the AFRL, which I like Walter, and he's welcome to come back, and I want him to come back, and I want Free People Radio to not become, uh a center of division. I'd like it to be a center of unity because I want to win. And the issue is, how are we going to do that when we hate ourselves and hate each other?
Right.
So, welcome, Jesse.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you very much for having me on. And I remember the first time we got connected was after a state central meeting, and it was on the very topic of Trump because I was fighting, bringing up a resolution to condemn the indictments against President Trump. Perhaps that's where the condemnation should be coming from the Republican Party to stand by our elected leaders. But You and I got connected on at that point because we realized we're brothers in this battle, and that there was a lot of aligned interest between you and I. We're both conservatives, we're both patriots, and we're both anti-establishment. And you're right that the establishment has definitely come after Action for Liberty. Uh, there's all kinds of false allegations, smears, and lies that are within the resolution that they decided to pass. This is nothing surprising. Action for Liberty's been through it before. They've tried to ban Action for Liberty before. They've tried to purge people. And since we've seen the script before, it's also going to be unsuccessful again. This is the thought police. This is the rhinos trying to control people. And they do not want to be held accountable, even within the own resolution that the state executive committee passed. It did not say protect the endorsed candidates. It said protect the incumbents. So they do not care about the endorsement. Alex Plekish doesn't care about the endorsement with his endorsement of Michelle Fischbach, which the delegates have not participated in any way for
Well, okay,
CD7.
since you brought that up, because
Sure.
we got a lot of people that are watching nationally. You know, Minnesota is just a metaphor or a petri dish or however we want to describe it for every place in the country. And, I was an officer on SD 45. I was removed. I lost an election. I ran for chair. I've been removed from state central as a delegate. I'm a fourth alternate. I mean, the people in my district thoroughly rejected me. I ran against Kathy Folk, and I stood because she was out 4 or 5 months ago saying she didn't support President Trump. So I just said, it's very simple. You support President Trump, vote for me. If you don't support President Trump, vote for Kathy Folk. And President Trump got waxed in the room. Now they're going to say I got waxed,
Mhm.
but if that room was filled with people that really supported President Trump,
Right.
I would have won. And this is disturbing
Hmm.
to me, very disturbing. So the inside baseball of what Jess is talking about, I served on a board with Alex Plekish for 2 years. SD 45, where I live, is his home district, and, I know Alex really well, and I was frankly quite stunned. Now, I want you all to listen to this if you're in Tennessee, wherever you are. We're not even into the election cycle.
Right.
We don't know who is going to run in these, uh, contests to receive the endorsement of the party. And in, Michelle Fischbach's district, which is called CD7, it's up in the northwestern. It's a huge district, but it's basically northwest to central west. There was quite a contentious, uh, election battle in the last cycle with a
Right.
very charismatic, uh, great I mean, he's a young superstar
Hmm.
in the making. His name's Steve Boyd.
Yep.
And, Michelle Fischbach could not get the endorsement at their endorsing convention, and then the weight of the party fell on Steve Boyd, and he lost in the primary, and that's cool.
Hmm.
There's no crying about that, that's called losing,
Right.
and we have to learn the art of losing, and I thought Steve Boyd was beautiful in his efforts. I'm not saying I do or don't support Michelle Fischbach, I don't live in her district, it's not my fight, but
Right.
my point is, when I was in the party, I would argue with people one to one, but new people coming to the party, it's not my job to put my thumb on the scale.
Right.
We want every Republican to come into the party. I do, not we. I.
Hmm.
Please, not a cognitive distort. Because obviously the party doesn't want that
Right.
because the party in Minnesota released a statement where Alex Plekish, the chair, praised Michelle Fischbach and said that the party was looking forward to supporting her
Right.
in her election efforts in the next cycle. Did I read that correctly?
Exactly right. It says that they are going to support her for 2026, and to your point, the delegates haven't even been set yet for 2026. There's a whole process, and here in Minnesota, we have an endorsement process before the primary, where individuals have to seek out the endorsement of the local activists within the community, and they have to win over the conservatives, and that's a huge process that allows the citizens to have serious involvement in the state. And when we have the chairman of the MN GOP who is willing to sidestep that and say that Michelle Fischbach automatically deserves an endorsement from the party. We didn't even see that type of behavior out of David Hand. It makes me think that the party is in desperate situations. I hear that they are not able to make bills. I hear that Uh,
You mean pay their bills.
right.
Oh, okay.
And so I just hear the MN GOP is in a tough spot. So what do? It sounds like in order to get themselves out of that spot, they have to be loyal to the establishment. They have to be loyal to Emmer, Fischbach, Stauber, and Finstad. And because that's where the money's going to come from, especially Emmer. Emmer is definitely the one who is still trying to manipulate and control the MN GOP. That is why his puppet, Bobby Benson, was the one to introduce the resolution to condemn Action for Liberty.
Oh, no,
Uh,
wait, we got a lot of national people here, and we got
sure.
people in Minnesota that don't know that. So, my state, Minnesota, and your state is divided into what's called, and we do this because we got a lot of new people coming in here that we just assume the activists,
Right.
that everybody's up to snuff here, and that's a mistake. We that's why we call it the Professor Penn Podcast, because we want people to get information, and information makes people potent.
Hmm.
We want information, intel. Every state is divided into congressional districts. Your congressional district is where your congressperson comes from. So your first step, if you're new, is find out what congressional district you are in and find out who represents you in the People's House. And in the People's House in CD6, which is just south of these studios, the elected congressperson is a man named Tom Emmer, which he's a he's a player. He is the House
Definitely.
Majority Whip. And when you see President Trump, you see Tom Emmer following along behind.
Mhm.
He's part of the inside circle. So we're not talking about when Jesse goes off on Tom Emmer, he's not picking on a backbencher.
Right.
I mean, this is taking some courage. But on his staff, if I understood correctly, there's a man named Bobby Benson that's on his congressional staff, or is
Correct.
that what that is?
Right.
But he
$130,000 a year is what he gets from Tom Emmer.
and he also is the chairperson of
CD6.
CD6, and he is the person who lodged this or filed this or fought for this motion
Right.
condemning Action for Liberty, which I want to talk about what Action for Liberty is. And Walter Hudson is also in CD6, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Wow. Okay, so now I've set the stage with the props are there. Everybody
Mhm.
knows it's a congressional district. There's a very powerful congressman there who is on the inside circle with President Trump. I personally feel that is keep your friends close and your enemies closer. But hey, that's
Mhm.
just how I observe it. Don't know. It's just that's just a pundit making a comment. I
Mhm.
don't know what's going on, and I'll tell you why I say that. What do I want to happen? I want, and I said this on the podcast Tuesday night. Before you were born, young man, I loved George H.W. Bush.
Yeah.
He was my favorite president.
Oh, yeah?
Favorite, loved him.
Mm.
About the time you were born, young man, I voted for George W. Bush
Mhm.
and stayed up all night eating popcorn as the tanks were rolling across the Iraqi desert.
Mhm.
I think your cohort over at AFL, Jake Duesenberg, I know he was serving. I don't know if he was in one of those tanks, but he was in about that time or
Hmm.
not that long after, right?
Mhm.
So my point is, I woke up at a certain moment. I'm a Reagan era cohort,
Mhm.
and at some point along the way, after George W. started saying WMD, WMD, and there was no WMD,
Mhm.
weapons of mass, I said, wait a second, somebody's lying to me here.
Yep.
And I woke up. Of course, I had a long history of reading, and it was easy for me to wake up because I was already watching it. But that pushed me over the edge, and I said, "These people will say anything."
Mhm.
Back to Bobby Benson.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Right.
So what happened?
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. It's another smear, but you're right that so this resolution gets introduced into the state executive committee. The state executive committee is a component of the MNGOP. It's a board made up of 15 individuals. There is a representative from each congressional district, and there is the treasurer, financial chair, the chair of the MNGOP, the deputy chair, and a couple other positions.
How the party governs itself,
Right.
right?
Yep.
We're talking inside baseball now.
Exactly.
Okay, please continue.
Yep. So, of that 15-person board, Bobby Benson decided to introduce a resolution condemning Action for Liberty, which it seems as if there isn't real teeth behind this. They are simply just trying to smear Action for Liberty. They say that Action for Liberty has a practice of doxing in the trenches volunteers, which is one of the most bogus allegations I've ever heard in my life. Action for Liberty hasn't doxed a single person. So we are still trying to figure out what exactly they meant by that. And considering that it was so unspecific, considering there was no details and there was no evidence or an example, we know that it's fake. So,
Wait,
the,
well, slow down. I just like because see, my brain, I wanna make sure I heard this. I wanna say back to you what I heard
sure,
because I read this resolution and it didn't accuse, it said
right,
that Action for Liberty was doxing, and, for people my age, and I just wanna make sure I understand doxing, is doxing giving out people's personal information in the hopes that they're harassed, or what does it exactly mean?
right. I guess I would figure doxing would be releasing someone's address, asking people to show up and bother them at their house or something along those lines, putting out information that would be damaging.
Potentially, threatening,
Right.
as this Dustin Gragey was swatted this
Sure.
past week.
Right, yeah, and that kind of stuff is not acceptable. Nobody wants to see that happen to anyone, regardless of whether someone's, politically aligned or not, we don't want to see a weaponized, system of justice. Uh, but
You
yes.
mean you mean mob justice,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And that's what communists do.
Right.
We're Republicans,
Mhm.
after all, right?
Right.
We believe in the Constitution.
Right.
We believe in rule of law. I do. I shouldn't
Mhm.
say we. I do. I'm a Republican. I believe in the rule of law.
Right.
I believe in elevated discourse. I believe in creating a better future for my fellow citizens through the contention of ideas in the marketplace. I don't believe in suppressing people. I
Right.
believe in listening. And but so when I want to say back, so the Action for Liberty was accused of, and when I read this, I was disturbed by it. I
Yeah.
just want to be very, I mean, that's, if it's not true, I mean, the point is
Right.
that the resolution said that Action for Liberty was doxing, what did they say?
In the trenches,
In the
volunteers.
trenches volunteers. And I thought to myself, wow, that's pretty mean,
Mhm.
you know? And I thought, why would they say that? And what I'm hearing you say is that is fake news.
It's complete fake news. I have no idea what they're even trying to reference. It makes absolutely no sense. Occasionally, what Action for Liberty will do is we might say, there's these members of the executive committee. There's going to be a vote on Otter Tail. Tell the members of the executive committee to stand with the Patriots of Otter Tail. Do not allow these delegates to be disenfranchised. So, if that is what they consider to be doxing, having their local people be able to hold the elected leaders to account, then they've got their definitions completely screwed up. This is just another attempt to muddy the waters, and rhinos do not want to be held accountable. Rhinos do not want conservatives who are willing to hold the Republican Party to account, especially in a MAGA direction. The rhinos are trying to manipulate and control the party as well. They want to just be a center right party. They don't want to be a liberty party, which is a massive failure. They should be appealing to liberty conservatives instead of pushing out grassroots people. It shows that this divisive attack uh, this proves to me that the MN GOP doesn't actually want to be successful. If they want to be successful and if they want to be a Big Tent party, I can be in a big tent with the rhinos as long as things are run fairly. I'm about the process. Like you said with Steve Boyd, he went through the process and didn't win the primary, so be it. But the process has to be completely fair. The process in CD7 wasn't fair because they kept out Otter Tail delegates. But the endorsement process and whatnot has to be fair.
Do you know what happened up in Otter Tail last week? Are you aware what
Yes,
happened up
yep.
there?
Big win.
Right.
Big win for the grassroots, and we'll have to see what comes out of, the MNGOP State Executive Committee again because, there is a new resolution that is being proposed to the, committee. It's going to be debated, to my understanding, tonight at 7 PM Wednesday, which this is going to my understanding, what they want to do is replace the people who were just elected at the Otter Tail County Convention and replace them with the establishment 2022 delegate list
Why?
because I'm sure the establishment will try to claim that this was illegitimate, despite the fact that Alex Plekish, the chair of the MN GOP, was at the Otter Tail convention. I'd imagine that the elections and whatnot had his blessing. I can't imagine that they were holding elections that were not going to be done properly. If you have the chairman of the party there, uh, the Otter Tail people have been dragged through the mud, and
Wait, wait, slow down now. For everybody nationally,
yeah,
we're getting into the
getting
weeds.
into Minnesota
But
weeds,
but
right?
let me just say what happened because this is happening in Tennessee. There was a Would you just go back and I think
Sure.
I invited the Hexams to come down to the studio.
Oh yeah,
And it's
yeah,
not
they're
for
great.
you folks in the apparatus. I am not trying to work this is a news and information podcast. I would like it to become a center where all can come and be respected. So Walter, come back. Walter Hudson, come
Hmm.
back. I had Pam Altendorf on, Drew Roach was on, AK Camaro was on. Hey, all of you, we need a center if you now going back to what Jesse said before we get to Otter Tail. If we're going to win, we need to have a big tent. Let Free People Radio be that tent because I don't have a bone to pick with any of you. Come on in and tussle.
Hmm.
Don't sit there on high and throw rocks
Right.
because what we're doing is we're breaking the party in two
Hmm.
as a group.
Yep.
I mean, it's not just them, it's the grassroots patriots. Everybody's kind of had enough of this now. So I'm making a plea as we move into an election cycle. I would like to win. I think we could win in Minnesota, but not like this,
Mhm.
right?
Oh, yeah,
Not
definitely not like this because, if they're dividing their own base, they're telling the grassroots that, they no longer want certain members of the grassroots to be a part of the party anymore. And, they say, the leadership of Action for Liberty within that piece. I should clarify, I'm an independent contractor, so I'm not a part of the leadership of Action for Liberty. I just happen to contract with them and, I write a lot of articles. That's, probably the main way that I'm utilized with Action for Liberty, because information is key. We do live in an info war, and I see so often that well, of course, the mainstream media is never going to be accurate. They're always going to be biased and slanted, and we need to have people who are willing to lay out hardcore truths, and we need to have people who have a bias towards liberty, that have a bias against tyranny, that have a bias for fairness. And when we allow the party to exile certain people and try to ban them and whatnot, like I had mentioned before, this was a failed tactic tried by Jennifer Carnahan, and this is just the latest attempt. She's tried to act like this. David Penn, I'm sorry, David Han has tried to act like this, and it sounds like Alex Blex is starting to act like this too. And myself and other people affiliated with Action for Liberty had been nothing but cordial with Plekish and the MN GOP. Uh, of course, we hold the legislators accountable, and that's a massive, a massive issue with the party because they do not want the Republicans to be held accountable.
Before we get too far, I wanna just clarify because there's people going, "What happened to Otter Tail? What
Right,
happened in Otter Tail?"
right,
So what happened in Otter Tail is,
and it
can you
goes
give
back to 2022.
a quick
Right,
60-second summary so
sure,
people, because this is gonna show the depth of this divide and this growing gap that's emerging that is dangerous to future Republican electoral prospects. What
right.
happened in Otter Tail?
Right. The Patriots of Otter Tail tell me the grassroots people say that ever since 2022, the endorsing conventions and the BPOU meetings and whatnot have been completely rigged. There was a time where I think Otter Tail County's BPOU did not meet for an entire year. They were keeping the grassroots completely out of the process. They had an establishment control of the board, and they realized that they were outnumbered. That the grassroots of Otter Tail County outnumbered the establishment people who were taking up the roles on the executive board and whatnot. Uh, and since then, the Otter Tail people have continued to show up to these conventions. There was the state convention where Royce White was endorsed, where many of them were not allowed to participate. This has happened to them time after time. Despite being duly elected delegates, the party has decided to disenfranchise them, claiming that they are not real Republicans. In some cases, because they had a sign for Nathan Miller in their yard. Nathan Miller was a candidate for Senate District 9, which is portion which covers Otter Tail County. And what went on in that race was a rigged endorsing convention, to my understanding, a very close primary, and then to my understanding, Nathan Miller continued a campaign as a write-in candidate, but he never took away his Republican status. He said, "I am a Republican write-in candidate." Uh, and so some of the reasons for why some of the delegates have been disenfranchised is because they supported Nathan Miller. So that was maybe the start to the mess that we see ourselves in. And ever since that point, the Otter Tail County delegates have been fighting to have their duly elected delegate status restored,
Honored.
honored, right? Honored because they've already been elected to these positions, and they were elected by the grassroots. The MN GOP party leadership and CD7 party leadership has no business to interfere in that. The Otter Tail delegates get to decide who is going to be their own representation. And we've got CD7, who does not want Otter Tail delegates to be a part of the process. If they were, perhaps Michelle Fishbach wouldn't have gotten, perhaps, Steve Boyd would have gotten the endorsement if Otter Tail delegates would have been able to be included in the
The
process.
original delegates that were disenfranchised.
Right.
So if I understand what you're saying, had they gone to that endorsing convention, Steve Boyd might have been the endorsed candidate.
Well, and actually, those Otter Tail delegates were at that convention, but they were not allowed to participate. So, a lot of these delegates, they show up even when even when they've got the party telling them you're not allowed to be here, as they should, because of course they're duly
Can
elected
I ask a
delegates.
question that is really the heart of it for
Yeah.
me? What is motivating these people up there, and why are they so different than the people in every other district in the state? Because I'm going to presume that they're not alone, that there are people who feel just like them in every nook and
Right.
cranny of every state in the country. But what has made these people, in your opinion, since you seem to know so much about it, if you don't know, just say, I don't know. But what is the psychological constellation of characteristics that has made them endure and continue to move forward? And every time they move forward, they get disenfranchised and disrespected. So I'm
Right.
curious, do you know what's holding them together? What's motivating them?
It's one of those things. I'm impressed by them because you're right that they continue to fight. They continue to show up, and the goal of the establishment, the goal of the rhinos, is to get these people to no longer want to participate anymore. They do not want these people to show up. They want everybody to give up. They want the good old boys club to maintain control of the party.
Okay, that now we're getting the pith of it.
Right.
This is the heart of the matter, the heart. And I have a big problem with this. Uh, and I say on the podcast, if people love President Trump, I'm cool with that. But I was for the ideas that President Trump is pursuing, many of them, some of them not, but many of them, before President Trump came down the elevator. And that's because of my role in business, being all over the world, participating in international trade.
Hmm.
And I personally understood, personally,
Hmm.
what my role was. And then I learned what I was doing to my fellow citizens.
Hmm.
So I'm like one of those rare cats that
Yep.
said, I'm out. I'm not going to do this.
Hmm.
And I remember my lawyer for my business met with Steve Bannon during 45 presidency.
Hmm.
And my lawyer was talking to Bannon about, his client, me, and that I had realized what was going on and I'd stopped, modified my behavior. And Bannon looked at me and said, he did what? Because see, the greed factor is
Hmm.
so high in our culture
Yeah.
that the idea of freedom has been extinguished by materialism.
Right.
And here comes President Trump, and they put him up as a, daddy Warbucks businessman. But what he's really doing is he's trying to reestablish republicanism in the country. In my
Hmm.
opinion, he's leading the party. The I had AK Kamara sit right where you are, and AK said, it is the goal and it is the mission of the RNC to support the president and the implementation of all of his policies.
Mhm.
That's the official line
Yeah.
from the RNC.
Mhm.
Okay, when it gets down to the MN GOP, it's already starting to wear thin,
Right.
okay?
Right, they're attacking some of the most MAGA, some of the most hardcore, some of the people who are most aligned with President Trump instead of saying, it'd be one thing perhaps if they were going after people who did not support President Trump and by saying, this is the state of our party, this is our leader. But that's not what they're doing. Let's keep in mind, there was only two state legislators to endorse President Trump in the primary. It was Representative Ben Davis and Senator Nathan Weisenberg. Weisenberg did it probably a month or two before Ben Davis. The rest of these people were either staying silent, backing Guantanamo Bay Ron DeSantis, or they were backing Bird Brain Nikki Haley. The
Oh,
majority of
yes.
which,
Oh, yes. Isn't
majority
that
of which were staying quiet, though. Which that's the typical politician. They want to just let voters portray onto them what the voter thinks they really are, and that way they don't actually have to be held accountable.
but I wanna just continue hold that
Sure.
thought. I just wanna say the heart of the issue is this restoration of republicanism. If you're in the apparatus and you're watching this because you don't like Action for Liberty and you wanna find out what I'm up to, because I am running for chair of CD3.
Mhm.
It's, hey, charge the light brigade. I'm going to
Yep.
do it just because I want to stand in front of my fellow Republicans and say there's a history here that goes back to 1854. It goes back to 1776. About 1946, we forgot that history and became a different kind of a country.
Yeah.
It's called the post World War II Democrat liberal order for a reason.
Yeah.
It's run by Democrats who are liberal.
Mhm.
I mean, the name of the order says everything you need to know about it, and half of the Republicans in the Republican Party are supporting that ideology,
Mhm.
and the other half, the Action for Liberty crowd, so to speak, are seeking a restoration of republicanism. So President Trump won, and if you really are watching this from a policy perspective, you recognize that what he's doing is he's trying to wreck the Democrat liberal order.
Mhm.
And he's not gonna get it done. I mean, I'm watching this and I'm saying, "Oh, look at these activist judges. Oh,
Right.
look at everybody jumping up, even the Republican Party, over a signal channel mistake." It's so nothing.
Mhm.
But, the press has a way to turn this into a giant indictment of these people,
Right.
and it's just the resistance is going to grow, and it's gonna grow from within the Republican Party.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of Republican elected officials like Bacon in uh, Nebraska, like, Roger Wicker in Mississippi.
Sure.
I mean, we can just stay here. I mean, these people are coming out of the woodwork now
Mhm.
because, their dog bowl is getting turned over.
Right. Those are
And
the real grifters. Those are the ones who, it's funny. The rhinos like to say Action for Liberty is grifters. We're the principled ones. And, Action for Liberty hasn't wavered on principles at all: anti omnibus bill, anti corruption, anti fraud. While the rhinos are the ones who, they were anti Trump up until Trump got into office. And
and
now
then
all of a
everybody
sudden,
had a red hat on.
yep, then all of a sudden they're MAGA all the way. And, there's people like you and me who were with President Trump before he even announced for this 2024
The
campaign.
ideas. Well, I mean, we have this classic episode. It's Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. It's
Mhm.
like a
I've seen the
189.
movie, yeah.
Well, we have this episode where we have Royce White on the thumbnail
Mhm.
sitting standing behind the podium when he was going to give his acceptance speech for winning the endorsement in the 2024 endorsing convention, which he won on the first ballot
Right.
overwhelmingly.
Mhm.
And I remember David Hand walking down the steps as I walked up, and he was ashen faced.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but to say something. It wasn't nice of me. Sorry, David. But you guys had worked so hard to undermine Mr. White's efforts.
Right.
And then I walk up on stage and the crowd's going nuts. And I look over my right shoulder and there's Alex Plekish with a Royce White for Senate sign, you know, screaming and cheering and acting like he was all down with the program.
Yep.
And I thought to myself, man, this guy wants to be all he can be. He's still a Marine. He wants to be the best politician he could be because I knew it was the most disingenuous act I'd ever seen politically
Mhm.
because I knew Alex's politics because I served with him.
Right.
And, I called you when he won,
Mhm.
and I said, uh, "Well, we got someone we don't know. We got rid of the devil we know.
Mhm.
Now y'all gonna get a dose of the devil you don't know, and now you're getting it."
Mhm.
Okay? So Alex abstained from this vote
Right.
condemning Action for Liberty, which is great. How political.
Right.
Okay?
And, it's one thing I think that you always have to take a stand, especially when a resolution like this is being brought up as the chairman and Donna Bergstrom as well, the deputy chair of the party, refused to take a stand on it.
No, they took a stand. They
Yeah.
took a stand.
Right.
They just didn't want their fingerprints on the weapon.
Right.
They didn't want their fingerprints on there. Otherwise, they'd have voted no,
Right.
right? So, I mean, that's just being a politician. No, we gotta have people that stand up and they gotta be counted. If you don't wanna be counted as supporting President Trump, because I know who you all are,
Mhm.
and all I'm doing here at Free People Radio is trying to support the leadership of my party. You all are not doing that.
Yeah.
Even Tom Emmer, who was a virulent anti-Trumper,
Right.
is wearing his MAGA hat every day, and every tweet is President Trump's great.
Yep.
So we can't even get that downstream from Emmer.
Yep.
I mean, really, this is not cool.
Right.
So
And, Emmer, it's, the biggest thing, the Ukraine war. That's the basic determination of whether someone is a rhino or not in my mind, because it's one of the most key issues of her lifetime. And it exposed the neocon rhinos for who they really are when they're spending over $100 billion on behalf of a foreign country that doesn't hold elections, that has a guy who plays dress up and insults our own president and vice president while in off, showing up to the White House. These rhinos showed exactly who they were, and Tom Emmer, as the whip, as you mentioned, of the GOP in the House. That means he's not another guy who is voting for this stuff. That means he is telling the other GOP representatives, get in line with this. We are asking you to support all of this funding for Ukraine. Uh, so, as the whip, that means that he is threatening these other congressmen to fall in line with the establishment wing of the GOP, or likely facing primary opponents. That's a massive problem. When we have the whip who is encouraging people to vote for bad bills such as funding for the Ukraine war and potentially taking us into World War III. And then as soon as President Trump gets into office, all of a sudden Tom Emmer's against the Ukraine war. All of a sudden he says Zelensky was very disrespectful in the Oval Office. Where was this? For this entire war. It shows that these people are disingenuous. They are willing to grift onto the next thing, and and yeah, Tom Emmer is perhaps the most guilty in this whole ordeal because he was encouraging GOP representatives to fall in line and vote for this Ukraine war funding.
well, the bravery, I mean, why you're getting the heat, of course, and why I'm getting the heat.
Yeah,
And let's just make this clear to those that are watching that are elected. You're Republicans. I went through this with Andrew Myers here in 45A. Just a perfect example of this, the precinct committeeman strategy.
sure.
I'm an American citizen. I am a Republican. I'm a proud Republican as a way of life. I'm self governing. Uh, my elected officials, whoever they are in the state, they're Republicans. I have every right to comment on their activities.
Right.
And I was told when this
We
started,
shouldn't be blind followers of anything. We should be, of course, holding our own elected leaders to account and to the things that we expected them to do when we voted them in.
I mean, it goes without saying that we're not with the Democrat.
Right.
We just don't want our elected officials to collaborate with the Democrat.
Right. We don't want the Republicans to become Democrats.
When we see bipartisanship, as Senator Julia Coleman recently highlighted as her goal as a potential statesperson, when we start talking about bipartisanship and maintaining the status quo, y'all have to understand that President Trump is elected by the majority of the people in this country. And there are people in this state that are committed to President Trump on a personal basis. Before we even get to the ideas, you people are playing with fire. What you think is these people are stupid.
Yeah.
You think they don't know what's going on. And when you saw the results in 40B, You found out that is not true.
Yeah.
They know exactly what's going on. They're not gonna come out if the party is collaborating with communists and working against a president that they clearly love.
Right. Well, on that 40B race, you're talking about a special election that was held because the Democrat Curtis Johnson was found not to have met residency standards. He was claiming to live in the district, but he had not actually set up residency there. And Tim Walz had to file a new writ of election. A new election had to be held. And the Republican leaders, after telling everybody that this was a winnable race, they deceived everyone into thinking that, Republicans were somehow going to win the 40B district, a deep blue district. Meanwhile, the Republicans lost ground in that race from the general election from 2024.
Big time.
And so if you can't even meet the standards that you met in the general election, and you're giving people the hope and the idea that this is going to give people the Republican majority in the House, these people are deceptive. I think that even maybe some of the House members were deceived, but real politicos were able to look at that race and say, this isn't going to happen. Instead, what Action for Liberty advocated for, it's funny that they attack Action for Liberty because Action for Liberty was advocating for Republicans to have an even stronger majority. Action for Liberty was demanding election integrity. In the 54A race, where Brad Tabke is from in Shakopee, Democrat Brad Tabke, there were 21 ballots that were thrown out, and this race was decided by 15 votes. So that means that more ballots were thrown out in the 54A race than the race was decided by. This is a huge, huge issue. And if we can't even trust our own elections, then we can't trust any of the politicians that are in there because if we can't influence our own government through elections, that means that we no longer live in a constitutional
And I
democratic
wonder
republic.
how people feel about this. President Trump signed executive orders just yesterday
Hmm.
to restore election integrity
Right.
nationwide. We haven't even been able to make up our minds here in Minnesota
Right.
if there's an election integrity issue.
Exactly.
So, I
And
mean, all I'm trying to do, hey, establishment people, I'm not against you. I'm for the president. Is it not in our Constitution? Isn't the whole point? I mean, look what Alex just did. He just said we support an elected Republican congresswoman
right.
before we even had an election because she's just fine as frog's hair,
Yeah.
right? But aren't we supposed to support the president?
Right.
Wouldn't that be the place to start? And is that not really, in your opinion, what's going on? That in the party, underneath the surface of MAGA hats and Israeli flag waving party member, because it's
Hmm.
interesting. They put the MAGA hat on and they raise the Jewish flag and wave it around, and everybody's together.
Yep.
But in reality, underneath that, they're using Israel because that's part of the Ukraine grift,
Hmm.
and they really don't want President Trump to succeed. I
Right.
mean, that's what I see. I
I
see
agree.
that be
There is
but
there is an underlying problem there. You're right that there's all kinds of people that are working in secret against the MAGA agenda. Meanwhile, Julia Coleman, for example, she was a big time bird brain Nikki Haley supporter. But what does she do now? She's got her laptop where she's got a big MAGA Trump sticker on it going to these conventions. She's a total fraud. Just like most of these politicians, I've got very low expectations and feelings about politicians. I think I assume that they're corrupt until they prove me otherwise. Because once you get inside that Capitol, whether that be the United States Capitol or it be the St. Paul Capitol, there's a corruption that goes on, and these people are ego driven and they care more about their own personal ambition than they do about the ideas that they're fighting for. Uh, and, back to this, district where in 54A that the ballots were thrown out, Action for Liberty was telling the Republicans, "You need to demand election integrity and reject this election certificate." This would have given the Republicans a majority, and this is the issue for why the Democrats were initially refusing to show up at the beginning of the legislative session. They were fearful that the Republicans were going to decertify Brad Tabke, as they should have. The Republicans then worked a deal with the Democrats on the precipice of a lawsuit that was potentially going to go in the GOP's favor for the Supreme Court. The GOP gave up all leverage they had. They gave the fraud committee that they got. They like to talk about that, but they have no subpoena power. There's no legislation that's going to be going through that committee. It's all just smoke and mirrors and talk. These people have sold out the potential for a true Republican majority. They also argued that it took 68 votes to pass legislation, despite 67 being a majority when there is one person absent. So the Republicans caved on issue after issue after issue. And for what? For a speaker's gavel, for Lisa Demuth. And we have to wonder, what are the Republicans actually getting out of this? They're not passing any bills. The Democrats and the Republicans are all just, you know, fake, representing their base while getting absolutely nothing done. What's going to happen at the end of session? What always happens? Omnibus bills. They're going to be passing these massive omnibus bills, and they're going to get the uniparty politicians to fall in line with it. And, it's only going to be perhaps a select few conservatives in the legislature who decide to oppose it and uh, represent, and try to do what people elected them to do. Republican voters did not send their Republican politicians to St. Paul to pass unconstitutional, multi subject, 1,000-page omnibus bills. They sent them to do single subject bills. They sent them to straighten out the mess. They sent them to uncover the fraud. And they sent them to shrink the size and scope of government and increase the amount of liberty that we have. And since the Republican Party is doing nothing but failing on those measures, and I see when they do look like they're fighting, it's all talk, and there's no genuine fight in there. So I think the Republican Party is in a tough spot because you're right that it's so simple. Unify behind the message of MAGA, unify behind the message of President Trump. But we have so many rhinos in secret who are fighting that message.
Well, and for the people that are going to come to the CD3 convention where I'm going to run, I'll meet with anybody. I mean, this is really about understanding the policy changes that are being brought forth by the president. So what I'm doing in my social media on the podcast, and so for people like Kristen Robbins and Julia Coleman that I'm kind of uh, highlighting, it's not that I don't want you to win. I want you to win, but I want you to win as a politician who is supporting the changes that are being brought forth in the country. And I don't think you really support those changes.
Hmm.
But prove to me I'm wrong. So when I criticize you, it's not that I'm against you,
Right.
like Andrew Myers. And see, I'm saying this for everybody that's listening. This is the effect you can have as a citizen wherever you live. There's a elected representative here in 45A, Andrew Myers. He doesn't run as a Republican when he runs. He runs as a, it's not about politics, it's about public service. So he's not really about advancing the agenda that the president has in mind.
Hmm.
He's got a job and he wants to do it well, and that's cool. But there was a social media post where he put up a picture of himself with the Hennepin County Sheriff, and the quote was, uh, I support everything, something paraphrasing. I love working with you, support you, everything's great. And I thought, well, that's nice. And then later in the day, that same Hennepin County Sheriff's Office came out and said, we're not going to assist ICE in rounding up violent criminals who are illegal in our city here.
Hmm.
And I asked him on social media, I said, Andrew, what do you mean by this? And he didn't answer me.
Mm.
So I roasted him
Yeah.
because, that is a core part of the president's agenda. And okay, if you don't support the president's agenda, Andrew, on this issue, come out and say it. Just let's quit the BS.
Right.
See, that's my point with the politicians. There's smart people around watching you now.
Hmm.
And we have something that was never previously available called social media. So I had a thought this morning before I got to the studio.
Hmm.
Do you see all this new social media activity from our elected officials?
Sure.
It's gonna stop.
Hmm.
They're going to disappear again because they're gonna figure out that when they pop up and tell us what they're doing, we can see what they're doing,
Hmm.
and they don't want us to see what
Right.
they're doing. So as quick as this popped up, it's gonna disappear.
Mhm.
because it gives you and me and all the other Minnesota citizens an opportunity to recognize the smoke and mirror game that's getting played.
Mhm.
So this is gonna end, and it's gonna leave the liberty movement people in control of the social media space. Plus, we're in control of it because we just have better, honesty
Mhm.
sells,
Right.
right?
Yep.
You agree with me about
Oh,
that?
yeah, I agree completely that, you're right that I would always rather take someone where I know where they stand and, they're being completely upfront and honest.
Not like
Uh,
abstaining from a vote.
right.
Take the vote, dude.
Take the vote.
Take the shot. I mean, don't stand there and let somebody else do the dirty work. You know, you're not fooling anybody. Well, I don't know who you're fooling. You're not fooling me.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not fooled by this because, there was all this effort by Alex Plekish at one. Didn't he invite you and other? Were you not in Washington? And said,
I was
what
in
was that?
Washington.
Tell that story.
Right, yeah. So Eric Mortensen, the president of Action for Liberty, former representative, and I were invited by the MN GOP leadership, Plekish, to attend the inauguration in Washington, D.C. As a big President Trump fan, of course, I was going to jump on that opportunity. And I saw it as a sign of good, it seemed as if it was a sign of good faith. It seemed as if it was an olive branch. And I was willing to provide Plekish the benefit of the doubt. And
Even though I was calling you and saying, wow,
Yep.
did I not say tread carefully
Oh,
here?
yeah, you'd given some forewarning, and
And Alex, it's not personal. I mean,
of
yeah,
course.
you're
That's
proud. You're
another
proud about who you are. I know you. I respect you. I do respect you personally, but you got to get called out because I served with you for 2 years and I know your politics.
right.
And I saw this rapprochement
Mhm.
with Action for Liberty, and maybe Alex was really sincere about that.
Right.
He might have really been trying to heal this rift.
And it could have been, Jennifer DeJornet, the executive director of the MNGOP. I'm not sure exactly how it came together, and I tried not to ask too many questions because I was surprised as anybody to be getting that invitation, which it was incredible to be a part of, to be in Washington, D.C. as that's going down, to, you can just feel the history in the moment, and there was so much excitement, and you'd be surprised that there was almost no liberal protesters. Washington D.C. became MAGA, and even the left had subsided at that point because we outnumbered them, and that's a sight that's not too common in Washington D.C. to see MAGA hats just roaming the streets, and because in most times in DC, I'm sure that MAGA hat gets you beat up. But at that point, we were the majority, and there was nothing that could be done about it. But to your point on personality and whatnot, I agree completely. Politics isn't personal, and it's irrelevant to me. Whether I like someone personally or not. I'd rather have a jerk who I can't stand that votes correctly. It doesn't matter to me whether or not, that person and I would be friends and would like to, hang out. That's like I'm saying, that's irrelevant. What's important is how they vote, what's important is what they do. And, so, we were invited to, attend the inauguration, it was great, and I thought it was a sign that, potentially they were willing to, not attack Action for Liberty as per usual, but, that didn't last long, did
I
it?
want to. I want to take a break, Tanner. I'm going to bet that people are going to like this dialogue. We agree with me?
Yeah, I'd agree.
This is great, right?
Yeah.
So let me do a little business. And
Mhm.
here's the business of the day because we're going to have to end soon, although we could probably do this for 4 hours.
Yeah, there's lots to talk
Oh,
about.
you have, please come back. Thank you for coming in. What are we trying to do for the party? Okay. I'm wearing a button. It's the precinct committee man symbol of the precinctstrategy.com, which is, it's the brainchild of Dan Schultz, but it's really the brainchild of the people that signed the Declaration of Independence
Yeah.
and gave us a self governing opportunity. And it's only an opportunity because when we don't self govern, the worst flotsam and jetsam in our society show up and grift us, which we're now seeing being exposed.
Mhm.
In fact, if it's government, it's robbery. It
Yeah.
doesn't really matter. I was watching a thing yesterday with Elon Musk and Kelly Loeffler, who is now in charge of the Small Business
Yep.
Administration, and Elon Musk was saying, "Hey, here's a $100,000 loan for a 9-month-old baby." I mean, what's going on?
Yeah.
And you and I are paying for it. So the
Right.
idea here is we are trying to encourage, and I want to learn about Action for Liberty because, as I said at the start, I don't even understand why this conflict is here. So I want a little historical context. But before we go to that segment, what I am trying to do, and if I was to be elected to the CD3 executive position, the constitution of the party calls for the building out of a precinct level grassroots apparatus. And that does not exist in most of the precincts.
Right.
This, in other words, you're listening to me. Who are you? You're a Grundoon out there and wherever. Actually, you're the sovereign of your own life and the most important person in the country. That'd be you. But because you have not joined the party and you are not self governing, the power gets aggregated towards Washington. And where you're not standing, some grifter is standing.
Mhm.
Because when regular people that are raising families and going to church and love their God and their country and their families say, I don't want to hang around with these folks. They suck.
Yeah.
And then you don't go in and do your work that the framers allowed you to do, which is a big departure from kings and queens.
Mhm.
uh, it doesn't work anymore. And you get a uni party that is representing oligarchs
Yep.
on both sides of the equation. And we end up with this status quo where everything government does is a vampire on the few people left that are actually working.
Yeah.
And so what we want to do, and I want to hear about Action for Liberty, but I came to it and I've been out and met some of the people there, and I think you're interested in doing the same thing, which is organizing grassroots participation by people entering the political process, going to what we call caucuses in Minnesota, becoming delegates in their Senate districts and then to their congressional districts. And my advice to everybody is let me and Jesse take the heat because we've been doing this for a while and we're used to it. And I know it's emotionally troubling. I mean, maybe it's more for me because I'm older. I don't know. You
Yeah, it
see,
can be. I try to let it all roll off my back. It's most of these rhinos, I don't even take the insults personally, because they don't mean it. When I hear the attacks against Action for Liberty, some of them, uh, I know that these are disingenuous, and when I've seen attacks against myself, it really doesn't phase me because I know where I stand, and if I felt that I was doing something unethical, then I would never be doing that. Uh, I know that these politicians are deceptive, and uh, so yeah, I think it's a little irritating to be lied about, but that's part of this game. I understand that politics is high stakes, and it gets people's emotions going. And when you have someone who is, we are ideologically different than a lot of these rhinos. Our missions are, and what we want to see in government is not the same as what the rhinos want to see in government. Um, so I see what you're saying too. That it's irritating, but if these people aren't coming from genuine places, we don't need to respect it.
but they're in there. And, Republicans, if you think about this, if you're in the apparatus, remember the myths of the stories upon which our country is built. George Washington could not tell a lie. The founder of our party, his name was Honest Abe Lincoln. So, wound into the myth and legend of what it is to be a Republican American is the cornerstone of honesty
Right.
because they were reacting.
Honest constitutionalism should be republicanism.
Well, that's why there is a constitution. The people that they were Republicans.
Right.
They were bringing forth the philosophy of republicanism into an action political philosophy called the Constitution of the United
Mhm.
States, and they were reacting to the corruption and arbitrary, deceit I mean, the deceit, the arbitrariness, the corruption of kings and queens, where everything aggregated to the top and the people were left as serfs, and now we're heading right back into that. We're actually in that kind of a political formation right now.
Mhm.
So I'm just gonna say to the people that are looking at this and let's just go back and look at the myth. Let's just start with honesty.
Mhm.
You know, honesty. Honesty. That's the cornerstone of republicanism. The cornerstone. Anti-corruption. But the business I want to do before I learn about Action for Liberty is we really, and I think this is the future, if there will be one, for freedom, is citizen engagement in politics.
Right. It's the only way. It's the only way to, correct course. It has to be through the citizens getting involved. And especially in Minnesota, since we are blessed with the process of having endorsements, that gives so much local control to the GOP activists and to the conservatives that want to be involved. Does it take work? Absolutely. But saving this country is going to take some work. And if the least that we have to do is attending an endorsing convention that to make sure that the conservative wins that endorsement over a rhino, then that's what patriots need to be doing. This
This
is a
is a
critical
this
moment,
is
and
partic per
citizen involvement will fix it.
your participation is required
Right,
because freedom is not free.
right.
We have to work at
It
it.
will get worse if you don't be if you're not involved.
And when Jesse says get worse, right now, so this is the great fear that I have is that Donald Trump is the reason for everybody to say, "Oh, we won."
Right.
We haven't won anything. President Trump is trying to enact into through executive order and through congressional action, change the country. But boy, is he meeting resistance, and that resistance is going to grow. And what I'm doing is I'm just saying, hey, in our party right here in Minnesota, and the Dustin Gragey swatting is the perfect example. Perfect. Because Dustin was a Ron DeSantis supporter. His
Mhm.
true self is he was mega for Ron DeSantis, and he trashed Royce White mercilessly at the Michael Broadcorp level. I mean,
Sure.
he was really, and so he really is not down with MAGA. But now MAGA won, so he's a big influencer, and he's like Mr. MAGA. And somebody mistook him for someone that really was MAGA. And I'm sorry, Dustin, and I'm sorry this happened to you, and it's wrong. You got swatted, and
Mhm.
it could have cost you your life, and it's awful. And those people, I would like to see them arrested. We would want to do our politics in fiscal safety if as long as we can,
Right.
forever if we work at it. But my point is for all the people that are in this apparatus, and you really have kind of mixed feelings about things, but it's kind of scary. Uh, it, it it's not any safety. I mean, if you really want to be safe, go join the Communist Party of Minnesota. Then you'll be safe because those are the people that are going to come look for you.
Mhm.
And if you're really and that's what's going on. The lack of courage to stand up.
Mhm.
President Trump has a limited number of things he's really working at. He's ending DEI. He's overturning the Green New Scam. He's working on election integrity. He's shutting down the endless war. I mean, he's got critical things he's working on
Yep.
that every state party, according to A.K. Kamara, who's a national committee man,
Mhm.
every state party is supposed to be down with this. AK went so far as to say, if you're not down with President Trump, we're going to work against you in the next cycle. But look what's actually happening.
Right.
So that is my
I
prelim.
like AK as a person, but he's all talk. He's all talk. This is all talk. As much as I wish he was truly MAGA, when it comes down to it, what is he doing? He's siding with the establishment. He is trying to disenfranchise Action for Liberty supporters, and with this condemnation. What I imagine maybe coming down the pike is that they want to have outright bans and loyalty pledges to say that if you have any support of Action for Liberty, then you're not allowed to be in the party. We'll have to see how communist these people really want to get. I put nothing past these people at this point. Uh, this is, when we have the MN GOP with, AK Kamara, we've got all kinds of people who are saying they support President Trump. Their words say one thing, their actions do another.
Well, this is also a process. I think all these people are individuals. I had AK in here. I don't have a bone to pick with any of these folks. But why I'm doing this is to help, to encourage, to teach what is republicanism and what's going on in the world because this is not politics as usual right now. We're actually this is our asses on the line here. But in some of the time we have left, I don't really know the roots. For all you people in the apparatus that think I'm shilling for Action for Liberty, I asked Jesse on because I really don't understand it. When I see this level of acrimony, I I just don't get it. I know Jake. I've met Jake. I've met the people over there. They seem to be trying to enhance Republican prospects and organize Republic. So I don't know what's going on. So could you school me personally on this organization? What is its history? What is its goals? And why has this gotten this way? Because
Right.
I don't get it.
Right. So this Action for Liberty comes from the Tea Party movement, and this was an organization founded from the Tea Party movement, and that was founded by Jake Duesenberg, who is still involved with Action for Liberty, no longer as the president. But Jake Duesenberg was one of the people to really push this. Eric Mortensen, former representative, is now our current president, and the mission of Action for Liberty is to protect liberty for the next generation. You got to wonder why the Republican Party has such an issue with that. In order to protect liberty for the next generation, you have to hold Republicans accountable. You have to be willing to lay the truth out there, regardless of who it's going to offend. And so, Action for Liberty exists as and I don't want to speak out of turn exactly on this. I'd rather maybe Eric Mortensen say exactly, but Action for Liberty has been the stalwart group for liberty in Minnesota. There's got to be uncompromising principles, and if everybody is willing to go with the wind, then nobody stands for anything. Eric Mortensen, he was so independent on his own within the state house that he was a part initially, gets elected as a Republican to go join the caucus. Then they split off and formed the new House Republican caucus at this point with Jeremy Munson, Cal Barr, and his name is the other guy's name is slipping my mind. He's from CD7, Tim something. It'll come to mind, but uh, so initially, and Drazkowski. So there was initially the new House Republican caucus that was the true freedom wing of the Republican Party within the state house. Uh, Eventually, it got to the point where Eric Mortensen was too hardcore, even for the new House Republican caucus. They decided to force him out of that, and at that point, Eric Mortensen was caucusing on his own as a Freedom Caucus Republican member. The Republican Party did nothing but work against him. He had, he always had to go through another primary. He had state representatives working against him. They had people door knocking in his district. State Representative Josh Heintzman was door knocking for Eric Mortensen's opponent. Josh Heintzman was dumb enough to try to knock on Eric Mortensen's door to try to convince them not to vote for
Well,
Eric
that's a
Mortensen.
great story.
And so these are the types of people that they're not even competent enough to figure out whose house they're not door knocking on. So these are not the types of people that should be running our government. Eric Mortensen was extremely hardcore, and what Action for Liberty does is it rejects the model of access based politics. Access based politics is I know this politician, I can get a hold of them, I can talk with them, uh, but unfortunately, the access doesn't get you anywhere. The politicians aren't going to actually do anything for you unless you are posing a threat to them, and the only way to be a threat is by holding them accountable,
By organizing.
by organizing, right? And uh, so Action for Liberty exists to, hold these politicians accountable, lay out the truth, and fight for protecting liberty.
Democrats and Republicans alike,
Absolutely.
because that's
The Democrats are obvious. So that's maybe why I didn't say Democrats right off the bat there. But you're right. Obviously, the Democrats are they're communists now. They're
well,
socialists.
that's my problem, for those of you who are in the party. We're living in a communist state. I
Yeah.
mean, these people are full-blown, communists. What is the definition? The first thing is, if you're in the Republican Party and you're a centrist in the party, you're cooperating with people that are anti-Christian. right off the bat. Well, let's get our ideological framework set. I can't cooperate with people that are anti-Christian politically. I do admit their right to hold that belief under our Republican system, but I can't break bread with them politically because their goals, their aim is to end republicanism.
Right.
I mean, they're absolutists. I'm not.
Right.
I think that our framers were so badass that they said, hey, freedom of speech,
Right.
believe
Exactly.
who you want to be. But again, if we're not organized as conservatives and we're not standing up for God, country, family, then they have full sway and they're in control.
Right.
Right
And,
now, they
politicians, all they care about is the next election. All they're worried about is getting reelected
not all
or
of them,
seeking higher
not all
office.
of them. I had Drew Roach in here. You know what Drew said? If I'm one and done, it's okay with me. I'm going to have principles.
Mhm.
I mean, so I don't know if that's true. I don't know him that well, but he
I
actually
like
said it.
Drew.
He
I like
said it
Drew.
right here.
No, I like Drew. Drew's a good guy. I was a little disappointed, not just in him, but in every single Republican in the state house. Kristen Robbins was pushing a fake version of the Action for Liberty bill, the Never Again bill. The Never Again bill is a piece of legislation that would remove unilateral authority of the governor to shut down our state. We say that no governor, whether that be Tim Walz or anyone in the future, should be able to shut down our state unilaterally without the support of the legislature. Our proposed legislation suggests that the legislature must approve by two-thirds majority a support in order for emergency powers to be declared. Of course, if there's a flood, of course, if there's a natural disaster, every single politician is going to come in support of a true necessary emergency power declaration. The problem is we've seen the emergency power declaration completely abused, and we've seen it manipulated to control us, and with the lockdowns of COVID. We cannot allow that to ever happen again. And that's why it's titled the Never Again Bill. Kristen Robbins introduced a fake version of this bill while Drew Roach was the supporter, the lead author in the House for our Never Again bill. The rhinos like Jim Nash were stifling the Never Again bill in committee, trying to make sure that it wasn't going to see the light of day. Meanwhile, they were giving Kristen Robbins' bill, covering the same exact topic, the fast track to reach the floor. What we were asking was to have that bill replaced, and we wanted to see the Never Again bill proposed instead because Kristen Robbins' bill did not prevent the governor from having unilateral authority. And in fact, it actually increased the governor's power on emergency powers in certain regards by giving him a little bit more time to declare these unconstitutional emergency powers. If I'm remembering it correctly, would still allow the government to shut us down for 2 weeks. Are we supposed to believe that that's the agreement now that we're allowed to be, he's allowed to be a tyrant for 2 weeks? We're allowed to lose our freedom for 2 weeks? Action for Liberty's position was that you can't lose your freedom for 1 minute, for 1 second. And so the only way to prevent that is with a bill that would actually eliminate the power and authority of the governor. Uh, One person cannot be trusted with the authority to shut down our state. And long story short, the Kristen Robbins bill reached the House floor, and there were some amendments that were being brought to it. The Democrats introduced the Never Again bill as its own amendment. To obviously they wanted to divide the Republican Party and force them to vote on a critical issue. All it would have taken was one Republican to vote alongside the Democrats on that amendment to force a vote on the floor for the Never Again bill. Uh, no Republican was willing to step up to the plate and do that. That was a disappointment because what we wanted to see was a true vote on the floor. That is the only way to really tell who's who. And when they do not want a house a floor vote because it exposes the rhinos, and there's plenty of Republicans who do not want to take that vote. Uh, and that's a massive issue if you do not want to stand up to the corruption of Tim Walz, and if you do not want to fight the COVID tyranny, and Action for Liberty is proposing the only way to get out of it. And instead, the Republicans would rather pass a fake version that's still going to allow Walz to shut us down in order to benefit Kristen Robbins. That's a flat out joke. And so it was disappointing to see the House Republicans all fall in line when it was so obvious to Action for Liberty and to so many patriots across the state who were watching the legislative session that the right thing to do would have been to force a vote on the Never Again bill and, you know, say it doesn't pass. At that point, we could accept that there was a floor vote. We got to see who's who in the zoo. We got to see who is going to support it, who is going to oppose it. They can't even afford us that opportunity. They can't even afford a floor vote, which shows how disingenuous these people are. If they really want to fix COVID and the tyranny, that's what they would be doing. Instead, they're pushing a fake version by Kristen Robbins to elevate the career of a rhino.
Well, this is not going to work anymore. I mean, and again, for all the elected officials, I don't want to see any Republicans lose. I want us to back, support, work for the implementation of the restoration of republicanism in Minnesota. And this is, it's not like y'all don't have some evidence that taking this center road doesn't work. We just had this election in 45 where Kathy Folk ran 2 cycles in a row trying to become elected to the Senate, wouldn't support President Trump. I mean, overtly wouldn't support President Trump.
Hmm.
Wouldn't allow her yard sign to be in the same yard with the Royce White sign, probably with the President Trump sign for all I know. Uh, my point being, it didn't work twice in a row. I mean, how many more times we got to keep doing the same thing? Maybe there's this whole thing in the party about there's this untapped group of Republicans that aren't voting. Like, if we just worked harder, they'd vote. Hey, how about they don't like us
Yeah,
because we wrecked the brand?
right.
How about because I don't think and this is why I've been telling people, party's getting on the verge of splitting. And then where are we going to be here in Minnesota? We're going to be nowhere because people are not voting for Minnesota Republicans, and they're Republican. They'll come out for President Trump,
Hmm.
right? So, you look at the electoral map of Minnesota for the last 10, 12 years, and it's getting progressively, 10 years. It's getting more red all the time.
Hmm.
It's not because of MN GOP. It's because of Donald Trump and Alex Jones
Right.
and Steve Bannon and
Hmm.
Tucker Carlson and Jake Duesenberg and Royce White,
Hmm.
that they're building up this incredible constituency. But now it seems to me that the party apparatus doesn't like that.
Right.
Am I right is that your opinion
That's
also?
that's how it seems to me too. The old guard does not want new people involved, and that's a major problem because the only way that Republicans are going to win is by having more people involved. And I ascribe to the same thinking that you do. That the reason why Republicans sometimes don't win, the reason why some Republicans don't turn out, is because the grassroots Republicans that are voters do not feel that that Republican would be representative of their beliefs,
So they
and
stay home.
so they stay home.
That's their vote.
Right.
I abstain. Alex, see, you abstain, and then there's a cohort out there that is actually taking your example. They're saying, hey, the chair of the party is abstaining. Hey, me too. I'm not voting.
Yeah.
I have better things to do than to support these people. Why can't we learn from that? Why can't we broaden the tent? And if you all really want to be so supportive of this Democrat liberal order, why don't you caucus with the Democrats?
Yeah.
Why are you following up the Republican? And I'll tell you why they are. Because that is uniparty politics.
Right.
They're really not Republicans in the philosophy of republicanism. They're just over here on the our side, gumming up this party. And you know what? On the Democrat side, they're going to split too. That thing's getting ready to fracture. The pushback on Chuck Schumer back in this
Yeah.
CR is tremendous.
Mhm.
And so they've got their communist wing is going, hey, we can't deal with these center people.
Right.
Let them fracture in two
Mhm.
and let us unify
Right.
and learn to work together, be respectful, and let's realize what we're unifying behind.
Right.
Donald Trump
Mhm.
is the president of the United States. Now, I say this on the podcast a lot. You probably don't. Do you know the movie Dr. Strangelove?
I don't think
Oh,
so.
you got to watch it. You
Yeah.
too, Tanner.
Yeah, it's on
Watch
my
that
list.
movie. See, you young bloods don't know these. This is a Stanley Kubrick movie from 1963,
Mhm.
and it's about Armageddon. And a U.S. military general sends the wing of B-52s by himself. And he says, hey, back there in the Pentagon right now, they're figuring out that I've launched the boys with the nuclear bombs, and they're not coming back. Those
Mhm.
bombs are going down. So there's really only two options: get in the game with them, or we lose.
Right.
And see, Donald Trump, much to the chagrin of the party, is taking apart this uni party to whatever extent he can.
Right. I mean, I can't even imagine what it would have been like if he had lost and Kamala and Walz were put in that White House. We were going to be in a disaster. It was they're both way too incompetent to be serving in those kinds of roles. And while Trump isn't perfect, he is the best president of this generation, and he's up there, in the top 5 at least for the top ever, because the fight that he's brought into, and the reinvigoration of America First, to really bring that ideology to the forefront and redefine the Republican brand from the George Bush era, from the John McCain, Mitt Romneys, to this America First MAGA energy.
Well, let's get it back to where it's from the Ronald Reagan wing of the party.
Yeah,
Ronald Reagan would not like Donald Trump for sure,
right.
because what's being overturned is that post Nixon finance. Okay, this really gets down to it. Now, please listen to me. President Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard in 1972. All the money now is in financial services and real estate. The people out here in the counties of Minnesota, there's nothing left for them. All the money is aggregating to the top 20% of the folks that know how to manipulate information. What's Donald Trump saying? Oh, we want factories here.
Yeah.
We want jobs here.
Mhm.
We want to build things here. We want to have pride here. Whether or not Donald Trump succeeds or not is dependent on every citizen getting off the couch, getting in the game. You can find Action for Liberty. How do they find you, Jesse?
Yeah, actionforliberty.com, action number 4 liberty.com. They can also find us on Twitter, X, I should say, and they can also find us on Facebook. I think we're even on Truth Social too, but definitely much more active on Facebook and on X. And people can check out all of the articles that we write on actionforliberty.com.
And I'm here in Free People Radio. You can find me on X at Prof Pen Podcast. You're watching on YouTube. We're on Rumble. We're on X. We're everywhere. We're getting good at that. It's a great dialogue because we're
Oh,
both
yeah.
pretty good at this, right?
Yep.
It's fun. It's fun to talk to someone that does this for a regular discipline. But
Well, and it's nice to talk to someone else that gets it, because we're in these battles and we're in the trenches and we see the tactics and style that these rhinos use and the deceptive tactics, and we see that so much of this is all talk and because there's a lot of people that are just blindly going along now and assuming that the Republicans are all going to fall in line with President Trump's agenda.
which
And
is the opposite of the
Right.
case. But
Because the fight is still ongoing to make sure that the Trump agenda is followed through on.
I have to tell the story that Jesse started the show with. So I'm in State Central Committee, and this kid, because Jesse's like young, right? And he walks up to the microphone, and he's really almost country. Like
Hmm.
he's really kind of being almost funny the way he puts forth this amendment or this resolution that the Republican Party in Minnesota would uh, oppose the
Right,
persecution.
the witch hunts, the indictments. I can't remember the exact words I used, but I used some colorful language to
It, wa-
describe these
it
indictments.
was hilarious with his MAGA hat on.
Yup.
And I looked over at a guy next to me, a guy that's on the CD3 executive committee. His name's Mike Bang. I said, Mike, do you know this guy? He goes, no. I said, find out who he is. And so Mike got us hooked up because he
Mhm.
walked up to you and got your information. But this is how far, hey, apparatus, this is how far we've come. When was that? 22 maybe?
Yeah, it
Twen-
was probably, a year and a half, 2 years ago or
I
something.
mean, we didn't even know each other.
Right.
Nobody knew each other. So now across the state, a network, some people in the party, some people not in the party, which is why you have this thing about this loyalty oath thing you're
Mhm.
concerned about, you brought for, are now banding together with the intent of doing what? Precinct strategy, building out the party, which just happened in Otter Tail.
Right.
I mean, where the actual individual citizens decide that they want to get involved And I think that's what Action for Liberty is doing.
Mhm.
Am I right or wrong about that?
Right, and, Action for Liberty has stood by, especially the Otter Tail grassroots patriots, because, nobody has had it worse than them. Those people have been put through the ringer, and all because they want to participate in their local Republican Party. How ridiculous is that? That there's such a barrier to entry for people who just want to make sure that the Republican Party is living up to its conservative
Well, that
ideals.
was my point about Dr. Strangelove. General Jack D. Ripper sent the B-52s,
Mhm.
and people back at headquarters had to make a decision. Was it get in on it
Yeah,
or lose? And that's where we're at here as Republicans. President Trump has started this now, and he started it with great skill, great insight, and he's taken apart this Democrat liberal order brick by brick to whatever extent he can. Here comes the pushback. If he does not succeed, you're talking about Harris Waltz? Oh, who they're going to put in next will make Harrison Waltz seem like a blessing. They will bring forth true communism. I mean,
yeah,
the backlash on this is the end of the republic because the apparatus has seen what happens when the people start to organize. So the beatdown we're getting ready to take if we lose is going to be the smackdown. So if you're, kind of on the fence and you really want to vote with the party because you're a team player, and I get that, and that's a beautiful thing. Or it's a courage issue. I don't really want to. I know these guys are right, but I don't want to have problems because these are my friends, and I've been in the party for 20 years, and I don't want to get thrown out. I mean, if we don't have courage now, if we don't have the courage to make this play, we're going to lose.
right.
And so, I had Dan Schultz on here. Dan's not very optimistic, but our goal here at Free People Radio, and I think it's your goal at AFL, is to get people involved in the process. And I'm asking the party to support that. I tell you, maybe have never heard me say this, but Randy Sutter, who's retiring, and I like Randy personally. People got mad at me because I said this on the last podcast. I got terrible feedback from some of my followers. Don't say you like these people. Well, it's not personal, it's business.
Right.
It's just not personal.
Right. I'm with you that there's there's plenty of rhinos and politicians and whatnot that I can have a perfectly genuine, fun conversation with them, and they can be good people, and they can be the kind of people that you want to be your neighbor.
That's exactly what I got pilloried for.
Yeah.
People were saying they're not good people. Well, I am not a judge.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you I try to get along with everybody respectfully, and I've had a mostly respectful relationship with Chair Sutter. But when I was working at one point, he said, "Why are you doing this?" I said, "I want to get more Republicans in the party." He said, "We don't want more Republicans. We just want more Republican work from the Republicans that we already have."
Mhm.
And I call him, Mr. We don't need any more Republicans
Yeah.
because that is the goal of the apparatus is to maintain control by not letting new people in. Like the people in CD5. I watched Alex Plekish. I even watched Randy Sutter. I watched a lot of people talk about how important it is to get into CD5. That we can't get them all, but just some more.
Right.
We got the perfect candidate to do that.
Right.
The I mean, it's a once in a generation candidate to get in there and work on CD5 and trashed
Right.
in the
Well,
endorsement process.
part of the well, I know in CD5 they had Dahlia Al-Quidi, who is a big time anti-MAGA, anti-Trumper, who the very first time I looked her up because I thought, there's a Muslim running as a Republican. Let me see what's going on here. And sure enough, the very first interview I find on her on YouTube is her saying Donald Trump will never be the Republican nominee again, and he will never be president. And then, sure enough, she's running on the same ballot line as President Trump. So CD5, you're right that the only way to flip these people is by having a true MAGA agenda. Royce White proved that. Royce White picked up a lot of ground, and he had the best performance against Amy Klobuchar that any Republican has ever had. And that's not done by mealy mouth, moderate positions. That's by standing firm and refusing to concede on the most critical issues of our
Yeah,
time.
since we're back in Michelle Fishback, Alex, would you like to put out a similar statement for Royce White, who
Right.
got 1.3 million votes? I think the most Tina Smith ever got was like 1.3 or 1.4 million.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's right there in the pocket. We got to, but more importantly, Could we keep our thumbs off the scale and let the people decide?
Right.
Could we let the delegates decide? Could we quit fiddling with the process? Because that's not very Republican. You know, that's kind of communist
Yup.
to predetermine the outcome,
Mhm.
right? But, I had my election down in SD 45. I lost, and I'll tell you why I lost. Uh, the Patriots in the district, if they exist, didn't show up. We only had maybe a third of the delegates showed up for the convention.
Mhm.
So if the people don't show up, if the people don't actually participate, this apparatus in every state, like Oklahoma. Oklahoma, every county voted red, but the senator is Jim Langford and Mark Wayne Mullen. I
Mhm.
mean, this is what we're going to get if we don't get involved. We're going to get people that are in collaboration with the Democrat liberal order,
Right.
the Democrat liberal order. Let
Mhm.
me say it again if you're not quite sure if you're voting to expel Action for Liberty or you think David Penn's got horns coming out of my head. What I'm fighting to uh, replace with republicanism, which was the original founding philosophy of the country, I'm trying to return republicanism in the place where the Democrats'
Mhm.
liberal order is now holding control.
Mhm.
How can we, as Republicans, even have a question about this? I mean, I don't. I guess when you come back next time, we can talk about corruption
Mhm.
and money and selling out and how every aspect of our government, whatever it is corrupt and we're paying for it and we're inventory. Gosh, I want to play that piece with Kristen Robbins
Yeah.
to go out with it.
Yeah. Let's do
Okay,
it.
so Jesse, we're going to go out with a lot of times the Professor Penn podcast we go out with music. Today we're going to go out with something I played Tuesday because I bet a lot of your people are going to watch this.
Mhm.
And I want to thank you for coming. And I want to say to
Yeah,
the
I really appreciate it. Thanks again for having me on.
will you come back?
Absolutely.
Great, because it's great to talk with you. For the apparatus, I am not shilling for Action for Liberty. I am advocating for citizen participation in the Republican Party.
Right.
However, those citizens vote, I have no control over it. And if they show up, neither do you. And isn't that exciting?
Yep.
The unknown. Let us go off into the unknown and let us unify the Republicans in the state. I offered on X if people would like me to go any place in this state to talk about the history of republicanism, the philosophy of republicanism, and why it's been subverted by this this uniparty apparatus. I'd love to talk to anyone that's on the fence in the party that's listening and going, "Hey, what's going on here?" I mean, because really, if we're disenfranchising delegates, if we're condemning organizations that are promoting liberty,
Conservative organizations, right.
uh, what are we doing? I mean, really, what are we doing? Well, let me show you. We're
Right.
going to go out. I'm going to give it a preamble comment. This is Representative Kristen Robbins. She's up in the Maple Grove area, I think, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly. Um, she's talking about the business model of corruption. And she's like coming into contact with this. She's saying, wow, I'm studying this. And this is what I'm seeing. And I'm so glad, Representative Robbins, that you're seeing it because what you're describing is Minnesota state government writ large, a loop that traps their citizens in programs and nothing ever gets better. So, what Kristen Robbins is talking about is something that she saw in a specific area. And I'm going to say, Kristen, thank you. You're describing the whole
The problem.
system.
Mm.
So I want to go out with that. I'm not bashing Kristen Robbins. I think this is one of the most eloquent explanations of what we face as free citizens of the great state of Minnesota and what we here at Free People Radio are working to expose and then improve. And we're doing it not against anybody. We're just trying to hold our party leadership accountable to the philosophy of republicanism. Thanks
Mhm.
for joining today.
Thank you.
You're
Appreciate it
welcome
again.
back ASAP. Thanks, Jesse. Be well. Tanner, take us out with that clip. Thank you very much, sir.
But I think it's something the committee has deep concerns about is the business model of fraud. And so in my research, in testimony before the committee and in meetings with whistleblowers, what seems to occur is that vulnerable people in our state are preyed upon by people who are greedy and want to make money off them. And so they sign people up for services that may or may not be received, and then they either overbill or bill for services not rendered, or add in additional services that may not be necessary. And then people who really are in need of services either don't get the services or are sort of kept in a loop so that they don't really get better and continue to get signed up for services when they don't recover. And that seems to be the business model that I am discovering as I work through all these different programs and as we have testimony on the record or off the record.